Heya, it's Rhea, and I just produced Koseki Bijou vs. the World, the biggest event of my career. It was a massive labor of love from the whole team, but just to list off the tasks I handled, I wrote and designed the story and movesets, I created, edited, and customized over 30 minutes of visual effects and cutscenes, I implemented all the sound effects and custom edited many of them, put the entire show together in OBS using StreamerBot in a project that totaled 503 actions overall. And I drew this guy.
You need to wake up, so I use your friends against you.
Anyone fighting against the World Smith is officially Death's enemy, and we must fight.
This is too hot! This is so beautiful!
Well.
I'm not a cheater! I'm just the main character. It is called plot armor.
Oh, okay. Ow!
Wow.
What? Making friends! Friends! You don't need friends to be powerful.
You all believed in me, and I believe in myself.
Is white, burn to black. I want to use this video to talk about the design of the stream, going over the plot, why things happened the way they did, and the designs of every member's movesets. I hope you find it interesting. Everything should be timestamped so you can skip to whatever part you're interested in. So, starting with how this stream came to be. After Nerissa's birthday stream ended, Biboo pitched making a fighting game for her next birthday stream. I was unsure if I would be able to even do something like that since I'm not actually a coder, and making an entire fighting game seemed big. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought of ways I could make it work, and I got excited. I pitched a few ideas. One was a tournament bracket, one with like singles, one with doubles, and one was a boss rush style roguelite. We went with the latter since it fit Biboo more. I received a list of everyone that was going to be able to participate, and I started to conceptualize movesets for them, which I'll get into later. I also tried to make a story to surround the fights to give a bit more interest to the stream, especially since writing is one of my favorite passions. The main important things that I knew were that I had to have Biboo fight everyone one by one, and that Kaela was going to be the final boss, and we were going to give her 3 health bars. Now, first things first, I wrote this stream to be set in an alternate universe, so the lore in it wasn't meant to be canon to any of the Hololive members' regular lives and streams. I wanted to play around more with the character lore given to each member on debut, especially, as I think they all have amazing concepts. In this universe, every Hololive girl was more true to that lore. Nerissa was not meant to be the lovable wet cat she usually is. She was written to be the demon of sound who tries to drive the whole world mad with her music. I'm sorry, Nerissa. I love you. So this is the plot. In this world, all the Hololive girls are true to their original lore, and are spread apart in different parts of the world. The main exception to this is Kaela, who is a blacksmith, but she's one with much more fantastical powers. She's able to forge tools that let her shape space itself. There is nothing that exists or could ever exist that she wouldn't be able to make. Biboo was her apprentice, but Biboo never lived up to her expectations, so Kaela set a plan in motion. Kaela donned the title of the Worldsmith and created a meteor that wiped out the Earth, killing everyone. At the same time, she had used her tools to create a dimension that existed in between the realms of life and death, which is where the stream takes place. As the souls of the dead began to travel to the afterlife, she would summon those who were powerful to her realm and materialize them there without their powers. She approached each one as they arrived, telling them that she was working to try and save the world after it had been destroyed, and she needed their help. She crafted gemstones that were able to restore their powers to them, but unbeknownst to them, it corrupted their hearts and made them willing servants to the Worldsmith. Each person corrupted truly believed that the Worldsmith was trying to restore the Earth, and that anyone fighting against them was trying to stop that. Her pawns were spread out between 3 areas. The Abyss, the dangerous outskirts of this dimension. It's a forest of eternal night that hides shadows and shadows that seem to have a life of their own. Then there's Death City, the central area where souls pass through whilst traveling towards the afterlife. As a result of this, anytime a new powerful person is manifested in this dimension, they are expected to arrive here, where justice will capture them and take them to the Worldsmith. Lastly, there's the Forge, where the Worldsmith resides. It's protected by Advent, her most trusted guards. After setting everything up, Biboo appears. But the plot twist is this. The dimension was created to be a powerful time loop. The first time Biboo arrived in this dimension, she would fight Calli and die, before everything reset her back to the beginning. She would fight every person in this dimension hundreds of times, losing hundreds of times to each of them, and winning hundreds of times in others. At her best, she would make it to Kaela, only to lose there every single time. Kaela kept her like this, intending to have her keep fighting until she would finally be strong enough to defeat her and be worthy. The main hint to this plot point was actually in the dialogue with Kiara and Mume. Kiara mentions that, despite being a phoenix, she hasn't been reborn yet.
I'm a phoenix, for God's sake. I can't die. Something's stopping me from being reborn, and I think it has something to do with whatever is going on here.
That was because time hasn't been moving in this dimension, so her soul can't move her to the next cycle of life. This stream was meant to be the timeline where Biboo finally defeats Kaela, and the thing that breaks the loop is that she learns how to purify the gemstones by connecting deeply to her role as the Jewel of Emotions, and thus gains the help from everyone else in the dimension. Most importantly, she gains the help of Calli, who's able to prevent Biboo from dying and having the timeline reset. In the original story, Biboo wasn't meant to know anyone other than Advent, but it was adjusted later for Biboo to enjoy getting to talk to everyone after purifying them. I believe the time loop plot point was also never revealed, which was unfortunate, but it happened, it's okay. So you get to find out here from this video instead. And also, at the end of the stream, after the Worldsmith was defeated, I had originally planned to visualize Biboo bringing the Earth back, either using all the gemstones together or using Kaela's forge and the things she left behind, and then closing the stream out with some more narration. But I ran out of time. I will go into this in more detail at the end of the video. But instead, we left it with a message of Biboo telling everyone, "Let's go save the world," which I think was nice as well. That also brings me to the title of the stream. Vani asked Biboo what we were titling the stream so she could edit it into the promo trailer, and I pitched in requesting that it be Koseki Bijou vs. the World. It is a reference, of course, to Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. I saw a lot of Dio gifs floating around at the mention of Zawardo, but as much as I love JoJo, guys, it is Scott Pilgrim, come on! Scott Pilgrim is one of my favorite graphic novel series, and it is in my top 2 movies with Baby Driver, shout out to Edgar Wright. I wanted to do a fun reference, and it thematically fit with the plot of Biboo fighting everyone in that little dimension world, as well as having to literally fight the Worldsmith. I found the multiple layers fun. And that was the plot! So now we get to talk about the stream design. When I sat down with Biboo and the artists and talked about the direction for this stream, I pointed heavily towards Darkest Dungeon. Biboo wanted to do something a little edgier, and I think the art style of that game is very cool. And I love the layout for how fights look, and the use of narration. All of these things inspired how the stream was made to look. So for the opening, I needed to set up the circumstances behind why Biboo was in this world, and why she needed to go and fight a bunch of people. I requested a narrative for this purpose. Originally, it was intended to be one of the girls that couldn't attend, but everyone ended up being too busy to actually do it, so Biboo asked me if I wanted to take that role instead. Originally, I planned it to be Mume. But I did not know the news at the time. I did not know the news. And then I was like, oh, what about like anyone else? I was like, cause think about it, like who's even left at that point? It's like, okay, Kiara's busy and Crony's busy and Guru's busy and everyone's busy. So I was like, everyone's busy. I was like, well, who? I was like, is there anyone else who can do it? And then Biboo was like, do you want to do it? I was like, really? Can I? That would be crazy. I mean, if that was like, put me in an actual Hololive stream, like, holy shit, that is fucking amazing. I was insanely excited at the opportunity to officially be in a Hololive stream in this capacity, but I also didn't want to overstep in any way and make fans feel like I was invading this space. I talked about it and we settled on hiding my features with a cloak in a similar way to how staff are anonymized when they appear on holo streams, and I think that was very comfortable for me. I did the opening narration where I laid out the decimation of the earth by the meteor. Once upon a time, the world stood still. A bright light shooting across the sky turned everyone's gaze. From the lowly humans to supernatural legends. Blinding white soon eclipsed the stars themselves, and then the earth, as white burned to black. For the art, I requested the artist HeyWow to draw 2 illustrations. One of Biboo, where he referenced her outfit debut art setting and drew a city, and for the second, I requested something to show that this meteor could also be seen in other parts of the world too, so something that was not a city. When he asked who we could draw in that scene, I requested Mume due to the recent announcement of her graduation and wanting to honor her more. That narration took us to the hole, where I was waiting for Biboo to wake up. In the story lore, my character was one of the strong beings that had been summoned to this world, and for lore reasons, TM, I had been able to break out of the corruption from the Worldsmith and fight back, before being banished to this hole as a warning for Biboo to wake up to set her on the path of fighting back against the Worldsmith. Obviously, it was all a setup by Kaela, so I gave Biboo my gem, which she purified and turned into her own gem. The colors of all the gems reflected each person, so you could see that it had my colors when it was unpurified, and then Biboo's color scheme afterwards. Here are all of the purified gem designs. The funniest one was Liz's, which went through a few redesigns to try and have it not look like the American flag. I honestly, I think they were all beautiful in the end. I really like the gems. After Biboo leaves me in my hole to die alone, she arrives in the Abyss. Originally, I intended to have narration play over the parts where Biboo was walking between each fight. I only managed to write 2 of these before I ran out of time and had to prioritize other things, scrapping the narrative role in the end, which I was very sad about. For the Abyss, the narration I had written was this. You step outside the confines of the hole, leaving the stable comfort that it provided as you head towards the Abyss. Eternal night haunts this twisted forest, but you aren't afraid. You make tracks in muddied paths. Every nook and cranny hides shadows within shadows that seem to slither towards you. When you press ahead, they writhe in anger and begin to coalesce, spilling over each other until they form one whole, painting the silhouette of a figure that suddenly gains definition. And that's when Calli would appear. But before I get into her, let's talk about Biboo and her moveset. After receiving a list of all the people participating, I sat down and started designing everyone's moves. I made a mini character sheet for everyone except for Biboo, where I wrote down their lore, primarily referencing what was written on their official Hololive page, and then I gave them a motivation to support the Worldsmith and why they want the world to come back, good or evil, and then added any extra relevant information. The way that they played was that I took all of their moves and I made buttons for them using streamerbot decks that looked like this. When they clicked the attack move, it would happen, regardless of what the state of the game was like. I stressed to them that this was not a real game, and it was OBS made, so things would break if they weren't careful about pressing their buttons. Literally, not a real game, guys. There are no limitations. I cannot control them from pressing anything they want. If they press a button twice accidentally, it will run that move twice at the same time, dealing double damage and executing the list of actions to visually perform the move, which may fuck up certain assets appearing and disappearing and leave jank all over the screen. Luckily, I don't think that happened, so thank God. Now, for the movesets, I wanted everyone to have a regular attack. This would use whatever weapon they either have in their existing designs or whatever new one I would give them. After that, I wanted everyone to have a mascot attack that used their fan mascot. I thought that this would make the fans really happy to see and allow the girls to feel good about getting assisted by their fans in combat. For the third move, I wanted it to be related to the person's character or lore in some way to build on their set thematically. And for the final move, it was going to be an ultimate attack, which I just went with whatever was the coolest possible thing. So starting with Biboo. Biboo told me that her ultimate had to be Prison Break, but otherwise I had free reign. I knew we were working with her new outfit that had a katana, so I was going to use that for her attacks. I made her regular attack Cutting Gem, just a slashing move with it, but thought that that was too simple, so I made it so that if she attacked twice in a row with it, then it would do a multi-slash, dealing more damage and having a higher chance to crit. I think crits are very exciting and awesome, so I wanted her kit to have a way to generate a higher chance of them. This was also the first thing I worked on making in OBS. I knew this attack would see the most amount of playtime, so I wanted it to be as visually interesting as possible. I had Biboo's attack sprite appear and dash forwards before fading out, whilst effects like speed lines and cinematic black bars appeared to border this cool crossing attack that played at the forefront of the stream. In the back, I applied a 3D effect on the background, tilting it in the favor of the one attacking to try and make it more dynamic. I was really happy with this, to the point where I decided to use it for everyone's regular attacks. I'm not sure if that ended up making Biboo's feel less special, but it made my life easier to have a template for that, especially given the volume of attacks that I had to make visuals for. For her mascot attack, Wrecking Pebble, she hits her enemy with an exploding pebble wrecking ball, which deals damage and lowers the enemy's defense. Originally, it lowered their attack, but I wanted Biboo to get stronger faster, so we changed it to defense. Visually, the first basic idea I had was just for Biboo to lob a pebble at the enemy's head, but I'm very attached to making things as grand as possible, so I upgraded the idea to having a pebble act as a wrecking ball and swing in to explode. The visuals started with just a swing and explosion, but I felt like that wasn't exciting enough. I added in the aiming animation at that point, and then all the black space on the screen felt too empty. That's when I decided I'm gonna add a pilot in the corner. And since the artists were all very busy, I decided to just draw it myself. I love him. He is beautiful. I thought it would be funny if he looked a little goofy and out of it, and then when the fire call is made, he perks up and goes insane. For Biboo's lore attack, Heart of the Gems, she wields her gemstone and shoots a beam of energy at the enemy that touches their hearts and emotions. It deals damage, and the damage and accuracy is unaffected by buffs or debuffs. It also heals Biboo. I think when I originally designed it, it was meant to do more damage the lower health someone was, as a way of finishing them off and leading into the enemy purified state, but then I put an execute on her ult instead, and instead buffed this move to just have a lot of benefits in situations where it's good. For example, it originally didn't heal her, but that was added as a way to help Biboo win her fights. Oh, and of course the name is a move is a reference to Yu-Gi-Oh's Heart of the Cards. I couldn't help myself. For Prism Break, Biboo attacks at the speed of light and crits her enemy with an Executioner's Slash. This also uses her gem shards that you may have seen on the floor during every single fight. Basically, whenever Biboo uses her cutting gem attack or wrecking pebble, gem shards break off and embed themselves in the ground around her opponent. These stack and don't expire. Then, whenever her enemy uses a move that would require them to move, they take damage from the gem shards sticking into them. This idea was inspired by the Spikes move in Pokemon. For Biboo's ult, on top of it just being a crit, she also impales her enemy with those gems on the ground. So the more stacks she has laid out, the higher the damage. For the execution, if she had at least 3 layers of gems on the ground and the enemy was below 20%, they would die instantly. The visual effect for this move was edited together by HeyWow and came out looking very clean. I made Biboo blur as if she was moving super fast and disappear off the screen before the ult animation played, just for extra effect. Also, speaking of the ults, it was later into the project when I asked if we could bring more artists on in order to make ultimate splash arts. I cited the eye catches from Gurren Lagann and asked if we could emulate the dynamics from that and the art style utilizing black shadows. Vani drafted an idea of how the art could look using multiple layers that we could animate together. And then after that art was delivered by Hannah and Pino, HeyWow animated all of them to have a bit of extra motion and the cool visual effects that bring them in. He also edited together the visual effect for Kaela's onstage ultimate effect, whilst all the other onstage ult effects were edited together by me. I was so happy to have these splash arts for the ults. I really wanted every single fan watching to see their Oshi have their moment and get super excited about it. To wrap up Biboo, I wish I had made her moveset a bit more versatile. Cutting Gem and Wrecking Pebble were both physical moves that set up the enemy to die to Prism Break, and Heart of the Gems was a special move that was there to give extra utility to harder fights. If she was playing efficiently, there's an order to using the moves that makes the most sense and could be repeated every single fight, which I don't like. Lower their defense with Pebble, cut twice for the multi-slash, and then assess the situation. Do I need to heal with the gem? Do I want to attack again to stack more shards? If they're low, I ult, etc. I feel like I should have given her an extra move or designed her moves differently so that she could switch up her approach to every fight to avoid it getting repetitive. So back on track. Calli. She is the Grim Reaper's apprentice, Death herself. Her motivation to bring back the Earth was that life and death can't exist without each other. She needed the Earth to be brought back so she could continue to thrive in that cycle. I wanted Calli to open the show as the first fight, because I wanted her to be in charge of the death mechanic, being death and all. Anytime Biboo fell in battle, I had her travel to a miniature death dimension where Calli was waiting, and she would get to choose between 3 buffs, plus attack, plus crit chance, or plus special attack. I saw some people criticize how strong these buffs ended up being. The reason for that is because we had a schedule we had to adhere to, and replaying a fight in its entirety was too time consuming. So she had to beat them in 2 to 3 attacks tops. That's why I designed this the way I did. I am glad Biboo went down a few times though. I think Calli was really funny recurring bit and added a lot. She's also my Kabiyoshi, so I was glad to get to give her a bigger role. So Calli's regular attack, Reaper's Sweep, had her swing her scythe and deal damage to Biboo, whilst also applying 1 Aura of Death stack. Aura of Death was what Calli's entire moveset was meant to revolve around, as you'll see. Her regular attack also dealt more damage the more Aura of Death stacks Biboo had on her. Her mascot attack, Revenant's Cradle, had deadbeats come out of the ground and hold Biboo in place, lowering her defense for the 2-turn duration that they were out for. Each turn, including the turn used, they would apply an Aura of Death stack to Biboo. Her character attack was Sowing Flow, a move that had Calli wrap and stop Biboo's heart for a moment. This applied 1 Aura of Death stack on the turn it was used, and then 3 the next turn. I intentionally made this move deal no damage, because I was trying to avoid any negative implication that her singing would cause damage. Later, after giving IRyS and Nerissa moves revolving around singing as well, and having those cause damage, I was going to go back and give this one damage too, but I didn't want to have to rebalance her fight when it was already in a pretty good spot. For her ult, Final Reaping, Calli summons the Grim Reaper to swing his scythe and cull Biboo. dealing damage based on how many stacks of Aura of Death she had on her. Yeah. You could imagine that the best way to play this fight would be to use Sowing Flow to start stacking Aura of Death, use Revenant's Cradle to apply even more and lower her defense, repeatedly use Reaper Sweep until you're ready to explode people with your ultimate, or you know, you could just open with your ultimate attack. I think both are viable options. I actually wrote suggested fight flow outlines under each fight telling them what moves they should use in order for the first 5 to 6 turns, but I decided in the end not to share them because, well, some of them didn't follow a flow that was that easy to understand, but also I thought it would be funnier and more interesting to let them figure out what they wanted to do with their own movesets. And also, because Biboo is meant to win, so telling them how they can play optimally seemed like a bad idea. After Calli, Biboo moved on. This was the last piece of narration I wrote for this stream that never got to be seen and was meant to play as she watched from Calli to Bay. With your first taste of victory, you're no longer the mouse scurrying in the grass. The shadows bow out of your way, waving you forward as the one who now stalks the abyss. Twigs snap beneath your feet, caution lost in place of confidence. You make noise, turning eyes, but only one approaches you now. It seems rodents are still quite dangerous. Rest in pieces to the narration, you will not be heard from again. Godspeed. Anyway, Bay. I adore Bay. I think she is so funny and her energy is insane every time she does any of these streams I work on, so I was so excited to make her moveset be something really fun. She is chaos, mayhem, entropy, the very concept of chaos, birthed by the world itself. Her motivation was that she was born from the chaos of the world, but now the world is destroyed. If all that's left is nothingness, then everything is predictable, and so she can't exist like that. I wanted to make her moveset as chaotic as possible, so I put RNG elements into every single move and had multiple outcomes for everything. Of course, this made it a bitch to create since I had to make so many visuals that didn't even get seen whilst live. Luckily, you're here now and you can see them here. The pure RNG was her unique identity. Bay's regular attack, Havoclaw, has her attack Biboo with her claw. It has a 25% chance to attack normally, 25% chance to crit, 25% chance to miss, and a 25% chance to have her hit herself and Biboo at the same time. Her fan mascot attack, Rodent Scourge, had the brats appear and afflict Biboo with a plague, much like the Black Death once upon a time. Shout out to rats. Every turn, Biboo was meant to take damage from her disease and have a 25% chance to recover from it, and a 75% chance to have a random debuff occur instead. The list included Biboo losing her attack, defense, special attack, special defense, or accuracy. Vani drew and animated the animation for this. It turned out really cute. Bay's character attack was Cardinal Shuffle, named after cardinal directions and the shuffle of her disappearing from sight in a random direction. This was fun to make. I really enjoyed making minigames in some of the movesets, and this was the first one. When Bay used this move, she got to pre-select what direction she wanted to come from. Biboo then had arrows appear above her head and she got to choose what directions she thought Bay would choose. When she selected her choice, it revealed Bay's and the outcome would play out. If Biboo guessed correctly, then she would dodge Bay's attack, and Bay would hurt herself heavily. If Biboo guessed incorrectly, then she would be attacked by Bay and be caught off guard, taking heavy damage herself. The risk-reward idea of the move came from High Jump Kick from Pokemon. Forgive me if I do not pronounce this correctly, but Bay's ultimate, Balia Iacta Est, had the name reference Alia Iacta Est. Oh my god, I can't do Latin, guys. The Latin phrase attributed to Julius Caesar, meaning the die is cast. Upon use, Bay would throw a dice, which would randomly choose a number from 1 to 6 with 4 overall outcomes. If she rolled a 1, then she would take damage and lose attack power for the next turn. A 2 would have her swap debuffs and buffs with Biboo. 3 to 4 would have her throw the dice she just rolled at Biboo and deal damage based on the number rolled. A 5 to 6 had the screen warped, with chaotic squiggles appearing everywhere before Biboo took damage. I directed the squiggles to be reminiscent of Jinx's graffiti from Arcane, and Vani cooked super hard with the outcome. Most people were only allowed to use their ultimate attacks once per fight, but some people had exceptions, like Bay. I wanted to allow Bay to keep rolling her ult until she landed a 5 or a 6, and then it would be locked off. Unfortunately, the fights didn't last that long for her to get to do all of her moves loads of times to see every outcome, but at least she hit a 6 first try anyway. On my side, the game actually bugged here, causing her ult to play again for a second time after the first. This was not intended, but for a chaotic fight like Bay's, people could mistake it as intentional, so it's the best time for it to happen. I actually had to disable the action in StreamerBot to stop it from looping more. Bay's RP was also really fun for this fight. I was very happy overall. For IRyS, she was another fighter with a massive moveset and lots of visuals that I had to make that didn't get seen. She's a half demon and half angel that embodies two sides, despair and hope. Her motivation in the story was that the two sides of her soul must exist in harmony. If everything is only despair and there is no hope, then she would descend into madness and lose herself, so the earth had to come back. The half demon, half angel approach had me create 8 moves total for her, with 2 forms for her to battle in that had different styles. I wanted her angel side to focus more on healing, hazard clearing, and having a higher defense and lower attack, whilst her demon form focused more on damage and being less defensive. This was her unique element. Her regular attack, Deadly Disparity, dealt damage and allowed her to switch forms. She started the fight in demon form, as I figured she would want to deal as much damage as she could to start with and then switch to angel form to heal up after. When in each form, she could only use the version of her moves associated with that form, obviously. Her fan mascot attack, Aristocatastrophe, is one of the funnier moves, trumped only by the abominations I put into Gigi's kit. Since her fan mascot is a stick figure, I found it a little difficult to come up with a good way to use them to help out. So IRyS became the only fighter where we used her official character mascots, Bloom and Gloom, as well. I decided to have them come flying in to hit Biboo and buff IRyS. In angel form, it buffed her defense, and in demon form, it buffed her attack. I still wanted to include the aristocrats though, so I had the funny thought of putting them in the background like the guys in the Big Enough video. You know, the one where they go, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? Okay. And funnily enough, you'll never believe this, I could not find an audio effect to replicate that reference. So, the weird sound that you hear when the aristocrat appears is actually a recording of me.
That I then pitch shifted a bit in Audacity to be what you heard on stream.
Gloom!
Cinema. IRyS's character attack, Melodia Mortem, revolved around her singing. I was going to sample her music for this move, but ended up going with other effects. In angel form, she sings a beautiful melody that clears the field of any obstacles. In this case, it refers to Biboo's gem shards. This is a good way to reset the damage ramp up from Biboo. The demon version had her sing like a siren, giving Biboo a 50% chance to miss her next turn and cursing her to take damage every turn for the next 3 turns. Her ultimate attack, Apotheosis, was another exception to the ult rule. Each form had the ult do a different thing, and she could use each form of the ult once. For angel form, she would become surrounded by holy light, which would heal her to full HP, but then make her unable to attack for 2 turns afterwards. In demon form, she would become cloaked in shadows, and then release that evil to attack and deal damage. This move would reduce IRyS's HP by half of her current HP, and then deal that damage to Biboo, so it was better to use it at full HP, run some risk, and then switch to angel form to heal up. Ina's fight I enjoyed working with. She was meant to be the mini-boss of the Abyss, and the reason why the fight was meant to be hard is because Biboo's Heart of the Gems move would not affect her. This was because Ina is a priestess of the Ancient Ones. Ancient whispers and revelations are always buzzing in her head, calling for annihilation. Whatever this dimension was, it brought her closer to the Ancient Ones. Their voices are louder and they have control over her body. She works for them and fights for destruction in their name. As a result, the Worldsmith never corrupted her and she didn't keep her gem. There's nothing to purify, so Biboo's gem move doesn't work. Of course, Biboo ended up not using that move in the entire fight and swept her, so, you know. Ina's regular attack, Eldritch Spear, was originally not named as such and was described by me as Ina attacking Biboo with her tentacles and then constricting her afterwards, dealing damage for a few turns after as she constricted her. This got changed after Haywa drew this dope attack art where she used the tentacles closer to a spear. I changed the attack to instead have synergy with her character attack move, so that whenever Ina had her tentacle summoned onto the field, each tentacle would have a 50% chance to attack Biboo whenever Ina used her regular attack. Her fan mascot attack, Octopaw, had tacos rain down from the sky, buffeting Biboo and lowering her defense. Varney drew and edited the animation for this and made it much cuter than I imagined, but I loved it. One small issue I ran into was the layering for the animation. I had it on a layer in OBS where it was in front of everything, but then I tested it when Ina's tentacles had been summoned onto the field, and the taco that jumps off of Biboo's head looked really awkward because it should have fallen behind the tentacle instead, but it appeared in front. I tried to then split the animation into 2 files and put them on different layers, but for some reason this tanked my GPU and made everything lag. I could not tell you why, so I had to recombine them into 1 file again and just say fuck it to the awkward visual. I don't think anyone cared or noticed anyway. Ina's character attack, Chthonic Summoning, had her speak the ancient language and summon 2 tentacles to appear beside Biboo. Every turn they would attack Biboo and have a 50% chance to hit before disappearing after 3 turns. When I was designing this concept, I was looking at Alawi from League of Legends to see how her tentacles worked. I originally had Ina summon 5 tentacles and made them function similarly to Fury Swipes, having a low % accuracy, but they could attack up to 5 times. But this was really broken in practice, so it was reduced to 2 tentacles. I also did use an actual font for the ancient language, and it does have a secret message from me. Something super silly and not worth the effort to decode, but it's there. For her ult, Psionic Dimension, Ina changed the landscape to be darker and more freakish and deadly, before unleashing a Psychic Blast at Biboo. The landscape would stay changed for 3 turns, and during that time, Ina would have a higher attack and weaker defense. Ina's ability to change the environment was her unique fight element. This was also the fight where Biboo attacked Ina and IRyS's hot sprite appeared instead on top of Ina. I genuinely have no idea why this happened. I checked all of my streamer bot actions and they all looked correct, so this was truly a freak angel accident. Thank you, IRyS Protection. After defeating Ina, Biboo moved to the first bonfire where her merch drop was revealed. We had a nice little chest for it and Vani made a cute opening animation too. I created the bonfires as a concept mainly because I wanted a way to give the girls more time to talk to each other. Due to each fight being a one-on-one, barring FUWAMOCO, I didn't want them to pad too much time around the fight with excessive roleplay whilst under the impression that it was the only screen time that they would get. I wanted them to be comfortable knowing that they would get 10 minutes to hang out as a group and banter about the fights afterwards. It also let me soft reference Dark Souls with the bonfire as a place to rest between fights. I also referenced the Soul series with all of my action banners, though I changed the text to be a little distinct. During the show, anytime Biboo defeated someone with a gem, it said enemy purified, and if they didn't have a gem, it said enemy defeated.
They call themselves Justice, but they don't stand for anything other than the fancy of their master. There's this one with a big paintbrush.
She even broke down the walls of our last hiding spot with her bare fists.
It's like she always knows where we are whenever we're moving.
It was a blue blaze. Everything turned to ash.
Let's fight! Let's fight!
I'll protect my words, me, no matter what.
That cheating!
Okay, come then, fight. You fallen into my trap already!
Roses are red, the fire of my heart is blue. It is time to defeat you! You are judged as guilty!
I did nothing wrong!
I'll be cheering you on. I'm sure today will be your lucky day.
Next we moved to Death City, named fondly after the main location in Solita. Before getting into the fights, there was a cameo with Kiara and Mume, since they couldn't be there on the original live date. I just wrote them a script for a scene together to help with the exposition, and they edited it a little into their own words. I wanted them to talk about how this is a place where all souls pass through, and that when new souls manifest here, they're taken by Justice to the Worldsmith. Then talk about Justice and how scary they are. After that, I wanted them to give Biboo an item power-up. In my original drafts, Biboo received her power-up at the bonfire, and would receive all future power-ups at the other bonfires, and Kiara and Mume would give Biboo her birthday merch instead. Due to timings, I swapped this around. The original item buff was called the Eyes of the Abyss, and it could be used once per fight to ensure Biboo would get 100% accuracy on her next attack. It also did not consume a turn, so she could use it and then immediately use an attack afterwards. It also gave a passive damage buff to help match the enemies getting progressively stronger with larger health pools. I changed the flavor of the item to be Mume's feather instead, and it gave Biboo the keen eyes of an owl that would ensure her next hit. I was happy to get to do this again due to her graduation. Also, I had to do some pre-recorded scenes in the past for a Holo event, and I found that it was really hard for me, especially with the lag on Discord between regions, to know exactly when the person speaking live was done talking and when I should play the next line. So for this event, I actually made a deck with buttons so that Biboo herself could press them to advance the dialogue. It made it much smoother in my opinion, and I was really happy with how the scene came across. Finally, I saw some people speculate that Kiara had a small ghost design because she was included last minute, but that is not the case. I always intended for her to be a ghost and for Mume to be a manifested being so that they could talk about the dynamic of being each thing in relation to this world and how that affected them. And Ghost Kiara is adorable. Moving back to Death City, I asked for it to be a decrepit city area that was clearly abandoned, and to have other ghosts moving through it and hiding. I also wanted to foreshadow some of the members. both with the cameo beforehand and with the visuals. Raora's character was a painter who was graffitiing the walls, and the string at the top was set up by Cecilia. Kiara mentioned that Cecilia seemed to always be able to find them whenever they're moving.
I don't know how, but we have to work twice as hard to escape her. It's like she always knows where we are whenever we're moving.
And this is because Cecilia uses her string like a spider's web, feeling the vibrations and being able to locate new manifestations or enemies. The first fight was Raora, and holy shit, her RP was so fun to watch, and her fight was hilarious. She was also really fun to design. I looked at the most different media for inspiration on her, including Okami, Splatoon, and Naruto. Raora is the artist with god eyes, who perfected her craft to a deadly point. Her motivation was that as an artist, she believes in the beauty of life in the world. With the destruction of Earth, she lost that. Her moveset was similar to Calli's in terms of playstyle, but I wanted to have this fight be a tutorial for using Mume's Feather, so I included accuracy debuffs in her kit. Raora's first attack, Draw Blood, has her painted attack on Biboo, covering her in paint. Visually, we had 3 different designs for the regular attack paint effect. A cross, a heart, and a chatino. But I don't think they all got seen, maybe? It would randomly choose one, with a bias towards the chatini because I really wanted that one to be seen. This was inspired by me watching Okami videos. I was even trying to consider ways for Raora to choose or do something live, but decided to keep it simple. Using this move, put 1 paint stack onto Biboo, and for every 3 stacks of paint, Biboo's accuracy would decrease by 15%. The paint stacking idea came from me looking at how the Inklings are handled in Smash Bros. Ultimate, and how paint covers their enemies more and more, and that gives them more damage, although in this case, it provides an accuracy debuff. Her fan mascot attack, Picture Perfect, has Chatini deliver art supplies to Raora, which increases the effectiveness of her paint. It adds +1 stack of paint to anything that puts paint on Biboo, which means that if she uses this once and then attacks her with her regular attack, it will put 2 stacks of paint on Biboo instead of 1. This can go up infinitely depending on how much she wanted to use this move. Her character attack, Hypnotic Behind, has Raora wag her tail really cutely to enamor Biboo and make her potentially unable to attack. She had a 33% chance to be too infatuated to attack. It used to be 50%, but in playtesting, this was way too OP and she became a broken staller. Funnily, in the live show, Biboo was so unlucky and kept getting stunned by this anyway, but they played around it so well. This move also applies 1 stack of paint on initial cast, just because. Raora's ult, the home sketch, was inspired by Deidara from Naruto. Art is an explosion, yada yada, you explode now. This move sacrifices all paint stacks on Biboo in order to explode and deal damage based on how many stacks there were. I think she used it early and then asked if she could use it again in our talent chat, so I said, fuck it, why not, it's funny. This is what led to her and Biboo drawing and dying at the same time. I made the executive decision then and there that she would be counted as a defeat if she drew, as we hadn't gone to Calli's domain yet. Biboo actually ended up drawing again against FUWAMOCO later, but we were behind on schedule, so I had to give her the victory for that one. I really liked how this whole kit turned out. I was briefly looking at Grimstroke from Dota 2 for a little bit to see if I could use his paint attacks, like his Ink Swell, which explodes after a delay, but it ended up not fitting in as I put the explosion on her ult instead. After this came Gigi, who had my personal favorite moveset. I am not biased.
I'm not aggressive!
Go home.
But she is such a gremlin that I wanted to do some really stupid stuff with her moves because I knew she would live up to the RP hype. Gigi is the free-spirited chaser who used her giant fists to knock out her foes with brute force. Her motivation is that she fights for her friends, and with the fate of the world at risk, she would do anything to bring it back and make sure her friends can live long and wonderful lives. Now, the first thing to address is her move names. Yes, they are all League of Legends move names, and I did spend more time than I'd like to admit figuring that out. Denting Blows is from Vi's kit, The Call of the Pack is from Neyfiri, Blood Hunt is from Warwick, and All Out is from Cassante. For her actual moves, I wanted her to be relatively straightforward. She has huge fists, and I want her to fist. Sometimes there is nothing more raw than going JoJo style ora and punching a shit ton. Her moveset revolves around buffing herself and raising her crit chance so she can just wail on her foe. For her regular attack, Denting Blows, Gigi punches Biboo with her fists, dealing damage and having a chance to make Biboo flinch and miss her turn. For her fan mascot attack, the Call of the Pack, a shoebox drops down onto Biboo and traps her inside, whilst Grems scurry on screen and jump into the box to attack Biboo and leave their scent on her, which raises Gigi's likelihood to crit. Vani drew and animated this move as well. I love the Grems. For her character attack, Blood Hunt, I spent way too much time making the visual for this. It involved downloading footage of a werewolf howling, ultra keying out the moon from behind it, and then making a mask to separate it from the rest of the background, doing feathering to make it fade out downwards, then adding another visual effect behind Gigi for her powering up at the same time. I told her in her sheet that she had to howl when she used this, and by God she did. She howled so much, so hard, that it peaked on Discord and we heard absolutely fucking nothing.
Your death. And you know what?
Huh? What? Whoa!
Bloodhunt had Gigi smell the hunt that she has to chase and have her bloodlust take over. Her defense was lowered, but her attack was raised, and she gained lifesteal on all of her attacks for the next 3 turns, which I think caught Biboo off guard when Gigi ulted and healed herself. For her ult, All Out, I made another minigame. This time, I zoomed in on Gigi and put her in a little hype cutscene where she had a button to mash that would increase the amount of punches she dealt to Biboo at the end, JoJo style. I had the fist animate to get bigger every time she hit the button as if it was punching, which came out looking nice. I considered just having 2 outcomes for this for medium or large damage depending on hit count, but because it's Gigi, I had to consider the possibility that she just wouldn't hit the button because she thought it would be funny. So I had to add an option in for little to no damage too. She ended up hitting in the range of high damage. These ranges were based on the playtesting and how many I was able to get, which was not a lot, but I tried. Overall, I loved her visuals and the fight had really hilarious banter. It was my favorite to watch by far and it felt like it was balanced well. Biboo ended up in the ER with Calli and then did the run back where she slapped Gigi down. After that was Cecilia's fight, which was a total clown fiesta. Near the beginning of our talks about the stream, I had proposed a fight where we let the chat decide what moves Biboo had to use. I honestly didn't expect that they would keep choosing the move that did no damage, so it was hilarious to watch for that. Cecilia is an ancient automaton, crafted during ancient times and dedicated to eternal servitude of the Bloodflame family. As of the current age, she's tied to Elizabeth Rose Bloodflame. Her motivation to fight is having Elizabeth as her #1 priority, who was corrupted by the Worldsmith and ordered Cecilia to work with them as well, so she does. The Worldsmith's goal is noble, it's to save the Earth after all, so Cecilia does not realize that Elizabeth is corrupted for a long time. She has little inklings and feelings that something is off, but she decided to follow Elizabeth's orders instead of doubting her. For her fight, I needed a setup that led to chat getting to choose the options for Biboo. I had brought up that Cecilia would take her autonomy somehow, and the puppeteer angle we went with was perfect for that. I scripted the scene to play out so that Biboo and Cecilia would start their fight naturally the same way the others had started, and after the UI had been brought in, then Cecilia would get to attack first. When Biboo wanted to fight back, she would find herself unable to move, bound by invisible strings that suddenly appeared. I told her that she should cry out for help and then her prayers would be answered. That's when we brought in Pebble God. For this big guy, since it was meant to represent all of YouTube chat, I figured it should be a bigger and stronger version of Biboo's fan mascot Pebbles. That's why I went with the God angle. HeyWow did an amazing job on the design for it. His size also changed a lot. I always intended for him to be big, but in the original drafts, his head was scraping the health bar and he looked a little too silly, so he got made smaller. I also edited together the dumbass video of him floating in like an angel too. He is so goofy, he is so goofy, he is such a goofy, he's goofy. The idea was that the God of Pebbles would fuse with Biboo's body and control her. This is where I wished I could have had narration to make it clearer, but the idea at least worked without it still, and I think chat understood the assignment once the polls started rolling. I actually worked with Fuji to get a custom poll overlay done for this to appear on the stream, but it unfortunately didn't work on the day of, so it never got seen. It had Biboo's move icons and would have a cute little pebble appear above the winning poll option. I'm mostly sad about that because I think it would have made what was going on clearer for any VOD watchers especially, as the polls do not show when watching the VOD. I was worried that voting on polls would make Cecilia's fight take a long time, so I made Cecilia's moveset straightforward to try and avoid a lot of scuff, and I tried to have the polls running non-stop, so that Biboo could use her move and already have the poll for her next turn going while Cecilia took her turn. Cecilia's regular attack, Fiber Fillet, was a special attack damaging move that would cut Biboo's soul through the God of Pebbles' defenses. This move caused Soul Bleed, which did damage to Biboo every turn for 3 turns, refreshing the duration anytime it was used after. Her fan mascot attack, Pawn to C4, had my favorite name, referencing the English opening in chess as well as the explosive. For this move, Cecilia wound up an Otoma and had it run up to Biboo and explode, cracking the God of Pebbles' armor and lowering Biboo's defense. For her character attack, Clockwork Up, Cecilia wound up her own key on top of her head, increasing her attack and evasion. For her ultimate, Me, Myself, You Die, I really wanted to include Immered in Cecilia's kit after I watched the stream including her. Especially as a puppeteer, I had ideas in my head like Kankuro from Naruto of how she could control Immered. This is where her kit synergizes together. as upon the usage of this move, IRyS is summoned onto the field, inheriting all of Cecilia's stat changes before attacking Biboo with a crit that deals physical damage. This means that any setup for lowering Biboo's defense or increasing her own attack and evasion would decide how powerful IRyS was. IRyS functioned as a full summon, which was a unique tool for Cecilia on top of the YouTube chat poll gimmick, making her fight very fun for me to design. IRyS would soak up and then die to a single hit, which is why Cecilia had to increase her evasion before using it. However, it also encouraged Biboo to be involved in the fight as well and use Mume's feather to guarantee that they could kill IRyS together. Honestly, the fight was a little tricky looking back on it, especially since Heart of the Gems didn't affect Cecilia as she was not corrupted and didn't have a heart, being an automaton. Chat griefed for fun by repeatedly choosing Heart of the Gems, and Biboo and chat were both playing this game blind, so they had no idea about the mechanics, which meant it was very funny when they finally stopped and used Biboo's ult, killing IRyS, but dealing 0 damage to Cecilia. Thus, it was not a surprise when Biboo then lost and had to go to Calli. Some details got lost in the sheet. I had wanted Calli to tell Biboo that the God of Pebbles was some schmuck and that she could help free Biboo of the string stunning her, so that way she could go back to the overworld and fight Cecilia without having to use YouTube polls on the second run. This was because of the scheduling and trying to keep things on time, and is why visually you saw the turn ticker say it was Biboo's turn again after returning from death instead of Pebbles' turn, which it was for the first run through. But because that information wasn't brought up, polls started getting run again, which is why I took it upon myself to crank the numbers up and have the Wrecking Pebble one-shot Cecilia. I don't regret it, and I think it was hilarious personally. Hee hee.
Ah! Ow! Wow.
What? Excuse you?
Now, I really wanted to include one real mini-story in this stream to give it a little more depth than just a fighting simulator. Usually I use character relationships for this, so for this stream I chose Cecilia and Elizabeth as it was easy to make a character connection with the servant and master dynamic that an ancient automaton could have. After Cecilia lost, I had her shut down, giving time for the God of Pebbles to disappear and for Biboo to reset before continuing the narrative. After waking Cecilia up, Cecilia was meant to finally relent to Biboo that something is wrong with the Worldsmith, and her hunches about Elizabeth were correct, and it's her duty as a servant to save Elizabeth from the corruption and bring her back. So she goes with Biboo to the next battle and gets to have an emotional back and forth with pleading and other RP whilst they do that battle. It also let me play around with an assist mechanic. Now, I really loved Elizabeth's fight. Heiwa did a phenomenal job with her Fuji design, and her moveset was one of my favorites that I made mechanics-wise, and the RPing of it when live was all fantastic, so it made me super happy. In my narration notes, I had wanted to say a piece about how Elizabeth stood guard outside the gate to the forge, with Thorn held directly in front of her, its tip drawing a line in the dirt that may not be crossed. You know, but that got scrapped, so. She's the Scarlet Queen, Elizabeth Rose Bloodflame. Her family had been at the forefront of the laws of order and she represented them as a symbol. Her motivations were that she is order and everything right now is chaos. She needed to restore the Earth to how it once was no matter what, and find out who put the universe in such peril to begin with so she could bring them to justice. Her regular attack, Thorn in Your Side, had Elizabeth slash Biboo with Thorn and deal damage. Every time she used this, she sacrificed a small amount of her HP to inflict burning on Biboo, which dealt damage every turn for 3 turns, the timer being reset in any further use. And the lower health that Elizabeth was, the more damage that this attack did. I wanted to do something with fire and burning for Elizabeth, and a heavy inspiration for her moveset actually came from Huskar from Dota 2. He is a hero that likes to play at low health and uses his health to cast Burning Spears, which deals burn damage over time. I tried to encourage Elizabeth to play similarly and gave her a lot of healing and defensive options to help her feel comfortable to play on lower health. Her fan mascot attack, Rosarian Sanctuary, was one of them. It summoned the Rosarian shield in front of her, raising her defense and special defense until it disappeared after 3 turns, and healed her every turn for 10% of her max health too. Her character attack, Full Bloom, was the setup for Cecilia. I gave Cecilia an assist move in this fight that she was allowed to use only once for the entire fight. It would bind Elizabeth with her string, stunning her the way that she had stunned Biboo in their fight, but only for 1 turn. I let Cecilia know that she could use it whenever she liked, but there was an obvious flag if she wanted to wait for the most optimal case. Full Bloom has Thorn appear above Elizabeth's head and start to glow, and a text box appears saying that she's readying an attack. If uninterrupted, then on the next turn it strikes Biboo with a devastating crit. However, as we saw, Cecilia interrupted her, which cancelled the move. The RP around this was great fun, and I will be honest, I am one of the world's biggest Yuri lovers, but I was genuinely not thinking about the consequences of having this scene happen. I am not complaining. I'm not complaining. Thank you, lesbians. Elizabeth's ult, Final Judgment, started another minigame. And this time, Biboo got to play. A scale appeared on the screen, and Biboo had a button that would freeze the sliding pointer. If it landed in the blue area, then Biboo would be safe and be purified of any burning on her. If she landed on red, then she would be charged as guilty and damaged, whilst Elizabeth healed by 50% of her max HP. If Biboo landed the scale on blue, then this move would go on a 1-turn cooldown before becoming usable again. If it landed on red, it would not be usable again. The only way Biboo could land on the blue was by pure luck, I promise. The pointer was going so fast and there was a massive ping delay on clicking the button as the signal got sent from her click to the streamerbot deck, to my streamerbot, to my OBS. Sorry Biboo, you were never meant to have a chance to win. The general strategy for Elizabeth, if playing the most efficiently, was to use her regular attack and apply burning to Biboo. Then use her full bloom and get stunned by Cecilia. Then she can either regular attack again if she has about 1 turn until she's in danger, or use full bloom again, which will take 2 turns and go off now that it's uninterruptible. At this point, she can use her Rosarian Sanctuary to tank up and keep using Thorn in your side until Biboo manages to bring her into the range where Elizabeth could die to her ult. At that point, she would use her ult and heal back up. I was very happy with how things played out overall. It didn't take too long and the RP was excellent. At that point, Elizabeth ran off into the world and Biboo and Cecilia carried on to the bonfire. Obviously, with such busy schedules, not everyone could show up for everything as they had stuff to go and do. Elizabeth couldn't be there for the campfire, and Mume was able to show up live for this new stream date, so I slotted her into this bonfire in place of Elizabeth. At this bonfire, Biboo received her next power-up, her second katana. Very dumb, no activatable effect, just a second katana taped to her first that gives her a passive attack buff. Cinema. And shout out to Fuji, who created a special version of his website for me that let me create independent Fujis for people. So instead of having to update Biboo's Fuji after she received the katana, I already had the second browser source ready and just hit the original one and showed the new one. So it was very quick. When I did Nerissa's birthday, I had to hide the time it took to swap the Fujis over when they did the face painting by playing a 45+ second video of them getting drawn on. And even then, on one of them it wasn't enough time for the Fuji to update, so with this, being able to swap Fuji designs seamlessly here with new tech TM was insane for me. Big ups Fuji, man.
Well, 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 what do we have here?
Reduce stress, okay? You'll never get past the teamwork!
After this bonfire, Biboo moved to the Forge. The Forge was the Worldsmith's castle-type area. My original text for it was this. The Forge is a castle surrounded by a molten lava moat. The inside is an oven, brimming with a blacksmith's tools that are used to create oddities in space. Reality warps and bends, stitched together by fire and metal. I had imagined it having some kind of Bowser's Castle final boss type feel, but it ended up going in a slightly different direction as I think my original text got lost on the newest document. For this area, I knew that I wanted FUWAMOCO to be the guard dogs that stood at the end before the final boss. Shiori is considered to be the leader of Advent, but since I couldn't put her at the end as the group's mini-boss, I instead decided to put her at the start, which left Nerissa in the middle. Shiori is the archiver. She bears witness to influential figures and historic events, and archives them in a grand tome, coveting them all. Her motivation was that with the destruction of the world, she had lost the source of all the grand adventures she'd archived over time. She needed the world back so that she could continue to archive it. She was not ready to write the end just yet. I spoke with Biboo after the show, and Shiori's mechanic was one of her favorites as a concept. I also really loved it, as well as the Fuji design that Heiwa made with the big scissors and the Alice in Wonderland outfit crossed with a Don't Starve inspired style. Since she's the archiver, I had this design idea in my head of being able to archive and permanently store things away. So I wanted Shiori to be able to disable Biboo's moves by cutting them. It isn't a one-to-one idea that matches the execution, but I really love the scissors angle. So for her regular attack, Trim Down, Shiori attacked with her scissors, dealing damage and cutting the move that Biboo used last. Visually, this was represented in the move icons for Biboo's attacks underneath her health bar, and every time they got cut, the icon would show an extra crack as they fell apart. If a move received 2 cuts, then it would become unusable for the next 2 turns until it recovered. Her fan mascot attack, Proofreading, had Novelites reveal themselves in the walls. I requested the background for this fight to have a version where there were black goopy spots everywhere, and when this move was activated, the eyes would open inside of them to reveal the Novelites. They remain on the field for the next 2 turns, seeing Biboo's weaknesses and increasing Shiori's crit rate. For her character attack, Making a Martyr, I had Shiori read a compelling tale of Biboo's battles so far, increasing Biboo's attack damage but applying a cut to every move in her kit. I asked Heiwa to draw little bits of art of Biboo looking awesome, but I wanted to hover around her for this, and they came out very, very cute. The idea was similar mechanically to Swagger from Pokemon, in that Shiori spoke highly of Biboo and raised her arrogance, aka her attack, and then it gave her a debuff. For her ultimate, Last Word, Shiori tries to archive Biboo into her book. The name had a couple bits to it. First, she's trying to end her by archiving her, so it would be Biboo's last word, as well as Shiori getting in the last word by using her ultimate attack. And then since it's related to archiving in a book, this moment would be the last word of the book. And finally, it was a little reference to a move name from Silencer in Dota 2. I enjoyed creating the visual for this ult. I sourced a lot of old paper assets and brought them onto the screen, and placed some of the art assets into little mini pages that represented fun parts of the stream, which all then scattered away as damage was dealt to Biboo. If any move was currently unusable due to having 2 cuts, then it would be permanently disabled for the rest of the match. If multiple moves had 2 cuts when this was used, then Shiori would get to pick which one of those was permanently disabled. This is where I had some balancing concerns with making a martyr, as I was worried about a strategy where Shiori used that move twice to disable all of Biboo's moves and then permanently disabled one of them right after with her ult, like Prism Break before Biboo could use it. Disabling all moves would also then lead to 2 turns where Biboo wouldn't be able to attack at all. But I figured that Shiori lacked the damage to kill Biboo in that time, and she would then reappear with a +2 to her attack, which is a pretty hefty buff, so she would likely actually kill Shiori at that point anyway. I would say the fight went smoothly overall. I remember at one point buffing her defense up really high because she hadn't used proofreading yet, so I was trying to keep her alive until she could get it out. After that, we started to move into higher scuff territory, which I am deeply embarrassed about. I think the fights were really fun still, and people enjoyed everything, but I still felt bad. Nerissa showed up, and her design was of course all about her music and voice. Nerissa is the demon of sound. She believes that her singing should be the only thing people hear for the rest of their lives, so she drives them mad with her song so that it's all they can remember forever. She can see through the eyes of her jailbirds and carry her voice through them, making her a great spy and long-range fighter. Her motivations were that the new dimension was devoid of life to sing her songs to. She needed the world to be restored so she could continue to spread her music far and wide. Other members had a lot of melee attacks that made them move and take damage from the gemstones on the ground, but I wanted Nerissa to be strictly ranged. I also gave Biboo a sanity meter as Nerissa's unique fight mechanic. The idea was that whenever Nerissa used her moves, they would lower Biboo's sanity, and the lower sanity she had, the more likely she was to hit herself instead of Nerissa. Nerissa's regular attack, Dissonant Melody, had Nerissa sing and deal damage to Biboo, whilst lowering her sanity. Her fan mascot attack, Jailhouse Rock, had her call to her jailbirds and summon them to battle, linking herself with them. The less sanity Biboo had when this move was used, the more jailbirds would appear in the background, up to 5. And whenever Nerissa would use her regular attack after this, each present jailbird would also sing and deal damage to Biboo. Each jailbird would also lower Biboo's sanity by 0.5. The jailbirds would remain on the field for Nerissa's next 2 turns. So, I had these sliders to control how strong Biboo and her opponent were in case of any balancing mishaps, or if Biboo got really lucky with lots of crits. When she hit Nerissa for the first time, I thought it was too much damage, so I cranked the slider to make Nerissa tankier. This broke something and reset the fight to Shiori's if you saw the HP bar change at the top. I quickly moved it back to Nerissa's fight, but it had reset the sanity bar and the health pool, and I think this tripped up Nerissa. She had lowered Biboo's sanity, but because of my mistake, making it reset, she used Jailhouse Rock on a full sanity meter and no jailbirds showed up. I think I made a mistake again in passing the turn back to Biboo, and I should have just let Nerissa take another turn. I regret that and I feel bad about it, especially because I love Nerissa so much and I wanted her to have a really good fight. I'm glad that she was still able to make a comeback and have a jailbird appear again later in that fight. Her character attack, Cover Band, had her sing and disorient Biboo before creating an illusion of herself. When Biboo uses her next attack, it has a 50% chance to hit the real Nerissa. If she hits the illusion instead, she loses sanity and her move does no damage. If she lands the hit on Nerissa, then the illusion disappears since she now knows which one is real. This was an absolute bitch to make in StreamerBot. Since I'm not coding for real, I had to make an action for every possible outcome for all of Biboo's moves. So for Cutting Gem, I had Nerissa, Cutting Gem Regular, Nerissa, Cutting Gem Crit, Nerissa, Cutting Gem Multi-Slash, Nerissa, Cutting Gem Multi-Slash Crit, Nerissa, Cutting Gem hits Illusion, Nerissa, Cutting Gem hits Nerissa whilst Illusion is out. And I had to make those final 2 for all of Biboo's other moves as well, where if she hit the illusion would show a hurt sprite and disappear, and text would appear saying, Biboo, you hit the illusion, while she loses her sanity. And if she hits Nerissa, then the illusion would disappear, and she would get a text box that says, oh, you saw through the illusion. It was a pain in the ass. I wouldn't do it again, without learning to code, actually. Honestly, I was expecting that move to be the one to cause something to break, but it was actually completely fine and something else broke instead. Who would have thunk? For her ultimate, Shatter, it was named after her own song. It was meant to only be usable when Biboo was at 1 sanity, but the balancing was a little off on this fight, so she used it earlier due to the fight reset and skip turn. My flavor text read that she would scream, bursting Biboo's eardrums and dealing a lot of damage whilst lowering her attack for the next 2 turns. I had also planned to have the background music and sound effects get muted for those 2 turns and have a ringing sound play instead, but because a lot of the audio got added in the final day before going live, I didn't get around to implementing it. All in all, after the initial scuff, it wasn't that bad of a fight, but I am deeply regretful of the mistakes that led to that. Nerissa was very nice to me afterwards when I apologized a lot. I love you. She also wanted people to be able to see all of the jailbirds, so here is how that looked in the background. Moving on, we had the FUWAMOCO fight, which was one of the best in the show in my opinion in terms of balancing and execution. I felt like it lasted a really good amount of turns, nothing broke, the girls knew exactly how their moveset worked, and the RP was great. FUWAMOCO and Mokoko are the demonic guard dogs. They've guarded many ancient secrets and treasures in their lifetimes.
The One Piece is real!
Always getting the job done to whatever end is needed. But one thing is constant, they did it together. Their motivations are that they care deeply for each other, and the end of the world has put the future of them both into turmoil. They desire for the world to come back so they can ensure the safety of each other. Obviously, the unique aspect of this fight was that it was a 2 against 1. I had a really fun time designing their moveset to try and make it so that they obviously synergized with each other, while simultaneously not being so broken that they would just run over Biboo. That's one reason why I combined their HP together, so that Biboo wouldn't have to try and get through too, and so that they could keep comboing until they lost and the fight would remain peak. Their regular attack, Bow Bouch, let FUWAMOCO and Mokoko attack Biboo with their claws, dealing damage. This move had a secondary effect for when either of them crit. For FUWAMOCO, if she crits, then she inflicts bleed on Biboo and also lowers Biboo's defense. If Mokoko crits, then she also inflicts bleed, but she lowers Biboo's attack. Their fan mascot attack, Pack Tactics, brought in the Ruffians. Vani drew both sets of Ruffians, so each side would come in depending on who used the move. After appearing, they perform a group howl together which ensures that the other's next attack would be a crit. Most obviously, this is to encourage one to use this move so the other can crit on their regular attack and inflict the bleed and status debuff. For FUWAMOCO's character attack, Fetch, she threw a stick that distracted Biboo and would make her unable to attack on her next turn. To balance this, after throwing the stick, it would go on cooldown for 2 turns whilst the stick was retrieved. This move was definitely in my top 5 animations I made. I loved Biboo running off screen and coming back with a stick, and she RP'd into it really well. For Mokoko's character attack, Bad Dog, she got out a spray bottle to punish Biboo. And of course you would be expecting her to spray her with it, which is why I found it funnier to have her throw it at Biboo's head instead. This move makes Biboo unable to use the last move she just used again on her next turn. Similarly to Fetch, it goes on cooldown for 2 turns as Mokoko needs to go collect the spray bottle from wherever she threw it. For their ultimate, Who's a God Dog? FUWAMOCO and Mokoko must forfeit both of their turns to use this. They combine into the God Dog and slash Biboo with their big God Dog claws, dealing large damage. If Biboo was not bleeding, she is now afflicted with bleeding that lasts for 2 turns, and if she was bleeding, she is now afflicted with deeper bleeding that lasts for 5 turns. Given that I was nervous about the balance of this fight, I was so happy with this, so happy. It was so fun to watch and was really tense and close to the point of ending in a draw. Like I mentioned earlier, I had to award the win to Biboo because we were behind on schedule and didn't have time to go to the death domain and redo any part of the fight, but I'm content with that. We headed to the final bonfire after that. I think if I had had a little bit more time, I would have tried to include a deeper storyline during the fights for Advent due to Biboo being a part of that group, the same way I had made something for Cecilia and Elizabeth. However, if you noticed, in the previous fights I had other members give their gems to Biboo as she defeated them, whereas they did not in Advent. I wanted them to all give their gems to Biboo together at this bonfire and have it act as her final power-up item that is more powerful together than the rest of the gems due to Biboo's ties to the group. The gems gave Biboo a passive defense buff, and she would be able to use them once per fight to restore her health by 80% of her max HP. Now, you may remember the stream went down at this point after an announcement from Biboo. This is because you should not build a fighting game into OBS. It does not like it. I ran into this issue late whilst working on everything where everything was suddenly really laggy. I checked my GPU usage and it was running at 90%, and any extra video that played pushed it to 100%. After restarting OBS, it went back to around 40 to 50%, so I had no clue what caused this. Debugging attempts found that as I played through all of the movesets of everyone, opening the files and playing the videos for effect visuals and bringing in new Fujis, etc, all of these caused OBS to leak GPU usage, despite the fact that I was very vigorous about making sure I had the unload button checked for everything. I did as much work as I could to try and solve this issue, including optimizing multiple assets, including the Fujis, triple checking I had unloaded every single one of the hundreds of files, reducing the amount of videos playing at once in the final fight, and still this happened. Eventually I realized I just could not solve it, so I asked Biboo to announce the quick stream restart whilst I restarted OBS so that my GPU levels would go back to normal and nothing in the final fight would lag, since the final fight was a lot.
You need to wake up, wake up. I know who you are.
I'm not the same weak Bijou you've known before.
If that's the case, it's because you're so weak, and weakness disgusts me. Friendships disgust me. You don't need friends to be powerful.
Hellos, give me strength.
Burn!
It's hot, Kaela!
Burn! Made to kill! You like cute stuff? Yay!
Do you have any last words? Break! Yeah, of course he does. Of course he has base here, of course. What?
Biboo enters the final hall, emboldened by her friends behind her, all gemstones in hand, and confronts the mysterious shadow in front of her. The shadow reveals itself as Kaela. Shock horror! Nobody expected the Worldsmith to be her! I laid out her plans and motivations in the lore section earlier, so I'll move right to her design. Right from the start, she was always planned to have 3 health bars, since it happened before in Biboo's 3D debut. I considered doing 3 full fights, but realistically the project was already massive and this would only make it harder to give everything the quality I'd wanted to give it. I also really love cinematic fight finishes, so I wanted to make the 3rd fight more of a cutscene than an actual fight. Following the conventional way of doing this, I wanted her first form to be very unassuming and relatively easy to defeat. Kaela looked like herself, she looked human, she looked like she could bleed. Then, for the 2nd form, I wanted her to ascend to a cosmic entity form that looked much more monstrous and scary. For her 3rd health bar, I fucked around in OBS to try and find a way to reuse the 2nd form's visuals but make it look a little bit more menacing somehow, so that our poor artist did not have to draw yet another form that would only exist for about 2 minutes. For the first fight, I wanted it to be very simple and follow the same format as everyone else. Kaela's regular attack, made to kill, had her hit her hammer on her anvil, summoning a random weapon to fly at and strike Biboo, dealing damage. If it was a sword, it would also raise Kaela's attack on hit. If it was a rapier, it would crit Biboo. If it was a mace, it would cripple Biboo and lower her defense. This move also did more damage based on the heat of the room, which I'll cover in a moment. For her fan mascot attack, Triple Axle, 3 Pomelos slid along the ground and hit Biboo in her ankles, dealing damage and lowering her accuracy by throwing her off balance. I like the name of this one as a reference to an ice skating move. For her character attack, Stoke in the Furnace, Kaela hit her hammer on her anvil again, making the flames in the room burn brighter. Biboo would then take damage at the end of every turn based on the heat of the room. This fire effect had 3 temperatures, distinguished by color. The lowest heat was regular orange, the middle heat was a whitish yellow, and the strongest heat was blue. A stack of heat would be lost every 2 turns if she didn't use the move again. Kaela's first form did not have an ultimate attack, as I wanted her to look very beatable. She also had the name Kaela on her HP bar to help push this normal person vision. Now, after Kaela was defeated for the first time, she transformed. The mini cutscene animation for the transformation was made by HeyWow, and things then transitioned into the start of the next fight, where I blazed the fire temperature to max if it wasn't already there, and I brought in the assets for the second fight's mechanics, such as the reality bar. There were many ideas that got thrown around in my head for this. In the beginning, I thought about having the Worldsmith know one move from every other fighter's kits, but since most movesets revolved around synergy with the other moves, it made that impossible. Similarly, I considered letting Biboo's allies all get to use 1 assist move each for the final fight, but it would extend the turn counter by a lot and take away from Biboo getting to be the one doing the main fighting and being the protagonist against Kaela. I instead implemented the allies helping idea into the cutscene portion and decided to design an original moveset for Kaela's second form that didn't use the same conventions as the others, cutting out the fan mascot attack and replacing it with one rounded and character-themed kit. At this point, she was the Worldsmith, and her health bar said as much too. I will be blunt, I think there were a heavy amount of bugs and issues with this fight that I am, again, very embarrassed about, to the point where I have not watched this part of the stream again since it aired. I will explain what the Worldsmith's moveset was and then speak from memory of what occurred with the bugs. First, this fight had a new gimmick, the reality bar. When it got lower, the background would change to one where reality was more warped. If reality ever hit 0, then Biboo would instantly die. But she had a button to reset the reality bar that she would have to take a turn to use. The Worldsmith's first attack was meant to be called Stoke in the Furnace Inferno, but because of how big the Worldsmith's Fuji was, it meant that the text couldn't actually be seen if the move name was too long, so I had to reduce it to Stoke in the Inferno. For this move, she hit the ground, erupting fire out of the ground and burning Biboo and dealing damage. This move causes the room to heat up and has the same heat mechanic with damage dealt as the first fight. It also lowers the reality bar. Her second attack, Rejected Designs, made space rip open around Biboo, with horrors beyond comprehension appearing, making the reality bar lower at twice the usual rate until they disappeared after 2 turns. This technically belongs in the bug section of this fight, but oh man, the art that appeared for this move was actually my fucking placeholder art that I drew myself in Photoshop. My art is not that bad. I actually had even more of these stupid guys drawn that got scrapped, please look at them, but I was mortified when they appeared. It did make it ironically funny though that these were in fact rejected designs and we were meant to have something else. It turned out later that everyone had just forgotten this move as I never received art for it and I also never remembered it was there to make sure it got replaced. So we ended up with my beautiful little creatures. The Worldsmith's third attack, Deadly Arsenal, had her summon all 3 types of weapons from her phase 1 attack and strike Biboo at the same time, raising Kaela's attack, critting Biboo and lowering her defense. The move would then go on cooldown for 2 turns until the weapons could be recovered, as it was very strong. I think Kaela didn't know this because she tried to use the move again and it didn't work, but that's because I had disabled the move until the weapons came back. This move had one of my favorite visuals. I applied filters to Biboo's sprite and the weapons to make them silhouettes, and covered the entire background and UI with a white color source. I love this effect, it feels so powerful to me, and the execution of it came out perfectly as to how I imagined it in my head, looking as if all 3 weapons had pierced Biboo. The Worldsmith's ultimate, Big Bang, was sick as fuck. The Worldsmith creates a solar system in her hands and then launches it at Biboo, dealing more damage the less reality there is. The visual for this was made by Haywow, and I made a minigame within this move that did not get to be seen in the live show. The description of this move is so raw and powerful. How are you meant to survive a literal solar system being thrown at you? I wanted some kind of interaction for Biboo to defend herself. I played with the idea of mashing a button and she needed to hit a certain threshold or else she would die, or her mash amount would lower the damage of it, but I didn't want to figure out how to implement that, so I thought of maybe doing something that was purely visual instead. I made something using Relative Transform with the Move Source plugin in OBS, where I created this image of all of the gemstones from everyone and then hid it in between 2 layers on the floor. When Biboo hit a button called Defend Yourself on her deck, it would apply a Relative Transform and raise the image up by the pixel height of 1 gemstone, revealing it on the screen. She could hit this until all of the gemstones were on the screen. My streamerbot action was doing an if-else, checking to see if the position of this image was at a certain X and Y coordinates, the coordinates being when all the gems were showing, and if it was, then I made them all glow as if they're protecting her. Sad that that did not get seen, but at least I can show you it here. That's why the text appeared on screen telling Biboo to defend herself. The Worldsmith's ult was also an exception to the once per battle rule. I wrote down that she could use it once every 3 turns, but I believe what happened was that she thought the ult wasn't worth using at all unless the reality was low, but the fight had some issues. So she only used her ult once later on, and, well, that leads me to the bug side of things. The issues I recall started in the first fight. I realized that because we'd reset OBS and my programs for the game, it had removed Mumei's feather and Advent's gems from Biboo, so I had to re-add them mid-fight, which reset the fight like in Nerissa's. Biboo needed to have the gems as the damage output in the Worldsmith fight was meant to be such that Biboo would need 2 full HP bars to win. Then, for the Worldsmith's fight, the damage on her first attack was minuscule when it was meant to deal way more, which, when added to Deadly Arsenal having a cooldown, meant that the Worldsmith had no real way to deal damage outside of burn damage. Also, sometimes damage was being dealt twice randomly, like the room's heat function, and I remember towards the end of the fight that the Worldsmith's regular attack was playing the animation twice too. Honestly, probably a good bug since I was unable to play with the balance and the damage numbers ended up awkward and Biboo wasn't at much threat without this stuff happening twice. Also, at the beginning, Biboo hit the Worldsmith twice and had taken half of her HP, which was not good as the Worldsmith had no healing moves, so I panicked and decided to hit the slider to make the Worldsmith have a higher defense. But it did the same thing as the Nerissa fight, and it reset the fight. Ah! I should not have touched it! This then had an add-on effect, which was that Kaela had used rejected designs in the first section of the fight. When the fight restarted, the engine wiped the slate clean, which set the rejected designs buff to no longer be active. The way things worked was that I made every move visually inside of StreamerBot, and then we used the fighting game engine built into Stream Widgets to connect to StreamerBot using UDP broadcasts, and by the engine having the action IDs of all of my StreamerBot actions to activate them. So what would normally happen is that after 2 turns, the engine would trigger the rejected designs finished action, which hides the background image whilst the engine removes the debuff. However, because the turns hadn't naturally concluded, it did not trigger rejected designs to disappear. So they stayed there for the entire rest of the fight, with Kaela thinking the move was active whilst it didn't actually have any effect. I had my face in my hands the entire time. It was literally like my nightmare came to life, and the only thing saving it was that I was really proud of the visuals of the whole thing, and I was excited for the ending cinematic. I'm really sorry for these problems occurring. I hope they didn't impact anyone's experience too much, and I apologize that it was the climactic moment of the stream and all of these things fell through the cracks and were allowed to happen. No amount of praise can overcome the feeling of pride a creator takes in their work and how devastating it is personally when that vision is not fully met. Despite this, I am glad that the transition from phase 2 to 3 was smooth, with another little animation in OBS that I made this time. I used a spiral filter from the OBS shader filler plugin combined with move value from the move source plugin to have the background distort the way it did for this. When things moved back out, we had phase 3 Worldsmith, with the health bar going to big number, which I love, and a new name, Reality's End. At this point, narratively, I wanted Biboo to basically die to show that phase 3 is far too powerful to defeat. She enters Calli's realm, and as a reminder, this is the timeline where she purified the gemstones, which is the key to defeating Kaela. So where the timeline should have reset again, she instead is caught by Calli. Biboo is defeated and meant to feel depressed, but Calli's optimism and cheer encourages Biboo to pick herself back up. I wanted the gemstones to appear and circle Biboo, in a visual reference to something like Sonic when he has the Chaos Emeralds. After this, Biboo believes in herself, her own gem lights up, and she returns to face Kaela. I wasn't sure about the pacing of all the girls coming in. It's a pretty funny meme that the enemy just stands there and lets the protagonist monologue for 10 years about friendship instead of killing them. But who cares? It's cinema time! I loved everyone hyping Biboo up. I made sure to get pre-recorded lines from the people that had to leave early, which is why some of the lines had quieter audio. I actually had tested them and they were of a good volume, so I'm not really sure what happened. But overall it was good and most people were alive. I wanted to hit that super epic hyped up version of her ult that felt like Supersonic or Goku or something, so I had her glow. I played her ult animation twice, included a bunch more attack effects on top, some smoke clouds, lightning strike, give the feeling of impact, as well as combining it in with her multi/crit visual effect that just slid in at the end to finish the Worldsmith off.
You see, Kaela? Look at this power that I've acquired.
Did you even see? I just need to flip my hand and then they just fight against you. Friends.
They all believed in me, and I believe in myself.
Go!
And with that, we were done. Unfortunately, the rest of the show had taken such a significant amount of effort that I didn't get the time to make a super satisfying epilogue. My original notes wrote that after defeating the Worldsmith, the dimension would become unstable and begin to shake. Everyone would come together, and Biboo would combine all of the gems together and feed her emotions into it. She would call for all of the souls that have touched the dimension as they passed it and bring them back, using the power of the Forge to forge the gemstones and the power they hold into the earth as it once was. The gems would glow white, then cover the whole screen, before we go to an illustration from the perspective of space, seeing the world whole and alive again. There would have been some narrative work saying everything has returned to how it was before, and Biboo's emotions of strength and passion were holding the world together once more. Then I had the note, "Congratulations Evangelion," in all caps, with 5 exclamation marks afterwards. Anyway, since we had no time for that, I told Biboo to close it out by charging forwards and shouting, "Let's go save the world!" So it's implied they all use the aftermath to do that. And it has some allure of mystery of how that would happen, and, you know, they have to figure it out together, but that's an adventure for another day, ho ho ho! The pebbles that showed up for the credits were all drawn by Biboo herself. Since in the past, Gigi drew me for the credits of the murder mystery, I asked Nerissa to then draw me as a jailbird for her credits, and now I've made it customary that any Hololive member I work with must draw me too, and so I add the pebble to my collection. This has been a very long video at this point, so I ask for your attention for just a little bit longer to give some final shoutouts and thank yous. This was a very long project that took 5 months of work and many hours. Vani was a big rock to me during crunch. We worked on this together through the hardest parts, supporting each other mentally and emotionally and becoming much closer friends. I truly appreciate her and I'm grateful for her skill and ability to have made so many of the assets you saw in this stream alongside the backgrounds. HeyWow is an incredible artist who finished all of the sprites very early on, making my life much easier for building the stream out, and then returning near the end to help with additional stuff to lighten the load. He is super talented and I've loved getting to work with him the many times I have. Hannah and Pino let me bring my ideas to life to have the cool splash arts for all of the ultimate attacks, which I hope everyone loved. Dom is a friend I made recently who has done loads of coding work for me. I asked him a long time ago if he could make me a custom fighting game engine, which he had been working on before I picked up this project. It entered beta in time for me to use it for this, and it seriously lightened a massive load from me that I could rely on it instead of calculating all of the move stuffs myself through StreamerBot, so a massive thank you to him. And speaking of, I do want to give a massive shout out to StreamerBot and OBS, which I built everything in. StreamerBot is an incredible program that allows you to integrate with many other programs to control everything through it. You can create actions with the list of sub-actions that run when the action is called, and it's how I make all the funky stuff I do. It has so many uses, it's insane. I don't think I've discovered even half the possibilities that likely exist with this thing, and I encourage every streamer to play with it because it will really change your life. Thank you to Biboo herself for bringing me on to make this and trusting me. It was such a fun experience to try and make something so large with her support to hire the people I wanted to make it, and that it was, received as well as it was. It was an amazing experience and I learned so much, and I really love Hololive and working with the girls. Getting to talk to them and work with their ideas, it really improves me as a creator, and they're all just bloody lovely to me and so kind. I'm very grateful. Finally, thank you for watching this insane video. The script turned out at over 16,700 words, and it took a really long time to write, which is why this video is so delayed out from the stream going live. I appreciate all of the lovely words you guys shared on my tweets in my videos, and all the fan art of the stream that was drawn. I looked for as much as I could, and I loved it all. And if you don't mind me doing so, I would also like to take this chance to tell you that I am a VTuber that streams. If these kinds of productions are of any interest, I am always trying to make things like this on my own channel on Twitch at Long Live Raya. For example, I worked with coders to make a game called Dominion, where my viewers can join one of 2 factions and fight each other, fish, and many more features on the way. This was accompanied by a series of 5 streams I'm slowly producing that tell a story set in my world, where Raya is kidnapped and must be rescued by Twitch chat, and each stream has a guest. The first that already aired was with Grape, and the next one is with Nerissa. After that, I'll have K9 Kuro, Skara, and Gigi. You can join my Discord or follow me on Twitter or Twitch to keep up to date with when those will be made and go live, and if Twitch isn't your thing, I will be uploading edited videos of everything on this channel too, or you can see the full VOD on my VOD channel. I love making things. It is my passion and my love in life. Thank you for sharing that joy with me and enjoying my stories. I truly appreciate every kind message that's sent. I read everything and it means the world to me, and it keeps me motivated to work harder. I hope to be able to keep doing this for the rest of my life. So I hope to see you for the next thing that comes along. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Your Empress Rare commands it. Goodbye!